Pues muy buenos días. Good morning, everyone. So this is a variation from the way or the setup I have been having in this channel. Estamos en el canal que se llama Todo para Lectores. So this is my YouTube channel where I present different books, authors, where the authors talk about their work, especially if they have a recent work, which is today's case with our invited guest. What's different in this episode, I guess, is that we're conducting the interview in English. Most of the interviews are in Spanish, but since this work deals with Hispanic legacies, written the book that we're presenting in English, so I think it's more fitting for us to have the interview in English, so that we can have also that public that speaks in English and also in Spanish, ¿no? Así que podríamos hacerlo, combinar el inglés y el español. Les presento, let me introduce to you Rolando Diaz, a very close friend, good friend of mine. Rolando Diaz, and because this is uh, Rolando Diaz is an author. He has written plays, short stories, but he's also an academic. He's a professor. Es profesor, director del programa de inglés y español. Let me see. I have it written down. Um, so Rolando Diaz is the chair, an associate professor in the Department of English, Humanities, and Languages at Southeastern Oklahoma State University. So the interview is going to be talking to the author, but also to the academic, to the scholar here. Right? Así que, Rolando, muy buenos días. ¿Qué tal?
Hola, ¿cómo están todos?
Muy bien. Pues gracias por acompañarnos. Thank you very much for joining us, and especially because I know that you're quite busy, and but I'm familiar with this most recent book of yours, Hispanic Legacies, Essays and Interviews. This is uh, a scholarly work from you where you present ideas, essays, but also interviews to prominent Hispanic figures. So, can you give us a background of what prompted you to write this idea, write this book, put it together, and what else can you tell us about the book?
Okay, well, just a little bit about myself. I was born in Allende, Coahuila, Mexico, and raised in Eagle Pass, Texas. So, as far back as I can remember, I've been bilingual, bicultural, always balancing both sides of my identity. And my mother made it as far as fourth grade. My father made it as far as sixth grade. My only brother made it as far as ninth grade. And I was the first one to graduate high school. Um, this was back in 1983, and I went off to UT. I got a bachelor's degree in drama, and then I got from UT Austin the master's degree in drama, also from University of North Texas, master's degree in English from Texas Women's University, um, master's degree in bilingual education, English as a second language from UT Permian Basin, master's degree in Spanish, also from UT Permian Basin, and the PhD in Spanish literature, which is when Rodrigo and I were colleagues, both working on our doctorates there. Now, throughout the whole process, um, I noticed that there was a significant lack of information about the Hispanic Chicano Latino experience. Um, it's I spent my entire life, all 60 years of it. Yes, I'm not that old, I know, but yes, I am 60 years old. Um, in, I spent the entirety of my life looking for my own identity because I couldn't find it. I wouldn't see it on television, wouldn't see it in movies, couldn't find the literature that was out there that reflected me as a Hispanic, Chicano, Latino, bicultural, bilingual mestizo that I am, right? So I said, okay, with each passing degree, I would write about and look for the Hispanic experience. And that really came to fruition when I was working on the Masters in Bilingual Education, ESL. Some of those articles are in this book, and also in when I was working on the master's degree in Spanish. And of course, when I was working on the PhD in Spanish literature, I wrote a lot of essays for academic courses that eventually I was able to polish more and then include them in this book as well. So that is basically the sum of the articles that I wrote, the essays side of the book. Again, because they cover issues like Proposition 187 in California, where they were trying to negate services to Hispanic, Chicano, Latinos, or people only laws that were being considered then. Um, and this goes back to late 80s, throughout the 90s, and early part of this millennium. And what makes all of these essays so topical is because now we have a leadership in this country that is wanting to get away, to wanting to remove a lot of the ideas that I cover in a lot of these essays. They're trying to erase us, and that's what makes this book and others like it so important, because we have to address the issues. We have to educate ourselves. As the saying goes, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? Hay que conocer nuestra propia historia para saber a dónde vamos a ir de este punto en adelante. We have to know our history so that we can figure out where we go from here. Now, the other part of this book includes a lot of interviews. I've had the blessings of being able to meet a lot of prominent Latinos, and included in this are folks like um,
I'm sharing right now the cover of the book that we're talking about, Hispanic Legacies, Essays and
there
Interviews.
it is. I've had the blessings, the pleasure of meeting uh, high profile Latinos like Pepe Serna. He's one of the highest profile Latinos that you may never have heard of, but when you see his picture, you say, "Hey, I know that guy. He's been in 100 movies, 300 TV shows, etc." I've also had the pleasure of meeting folks like Carlo Perez Allen, the author of uh, All Bones Are White. I translated his book from English to Spanish. Dr. Rolando Hinojosa Smith. Any Chicano literature class is going to have at least some of his works there, right? Included that. Mr. Manuel Ramos, Ms. Lucha Corpi, all of these high profile Latinos. Also, folks that were political leaders of their time, like Jose Angel Gutierrez, who led the huelgas and the high school walkouts in Crystal City back in the late 60s. So, what makes that part of the book so interesting is that we are getting these stories in their own words. And that's a neat thing to see, because I conducted the interviews, then went back and transcribed them, and then included them in this book. We were mentioning before the United States Hispanic Leadership Institute National Conference. The main organizer of that um, conference is Dr. Juan Andrade, and he is also included in this book, and his voice is also heard here, and what his experiences were when he was a civics teacher in Crystal City as well, and he was arrested for teaching civics to Spanish-speaking students in Spanish. That because it was illegal at that time. So that kind of history that uh, the powers that be seem to want us to forget is what is included in this book as well. It's important for us to know. And that's why it's called Hispanic Legacies, Los Legados Hispanos. We have to tell these stories. We have to educate the next generation so that they know what happened, what has happened, and how we can move forward from here. Because Cesar Chavez himself has a quote where he says that you can't make you can't shame a person who feels pride. You can't uneducate a person who's been educated. You can't uh, shuffle a person around who understands his roots, his or her roots, and where he or she comes from. So that's the premise of the book. It's taken me so many years to put all of these together. But now that they're in book form, then they can be used as a background reader. They can be used in civics classes. They can be used in family dynamics and literature classes, etc. So that's a long-winded answer to your question.
Well, that's good because I was going to ask questions that, but you've already answered. So, okay, goodbye. No, muchas gracias. And you spoke very, very well. I was going to ask questions about the challenges that you had about putting together the book
Mhm.
and the opportunities that you see in the book. And of course, you've mentioned these ideas already in your answer just now. Um, where do you see the book um, going, and how do you see it helping out the legacies that are being built right now in Hispanic culture or society here, particularly here in the U.S.
Mhm.
We're both living here in the U.S., even though the video may be watched all over. But we're both you and myself are living here in the States, and we can see things that are going on, just like you just mentioned. And even if we don't want to touch on the political ideas, no, there is a sense of something. No, I don't want to go too much into detail on that.
Mhm.
Uh, but how do you see the book playing out um, within shaping, in a way, Hispanic culture right now here in the U.S.? Or how can it help?
Mhm.
I know you've mentioned some of those ideas, but can you be more specific on that?
Well, regardless of whether the environment, the political situation, regardless of whether it's positive or negative, I think that this book is important because its main purpose is to educate, to capture the legacies of all of these different things. So it can be used again if when things are wonderful and moving forward, we can use it to continue to educate the next generation of our history, of our culture, of our legacy. And if things are not ideal, if things are going a little bit more challenging, we can use this to empower ourselves, empower the next generation about who and what we are. Some of the titles, for example, include What's in a Name? ¿Qué hay en un nombre en español? What do we call ourselves? Why do we call ourselves that? What's the difference between a Hispanic, Chicano, Latino, Spanish, surnamed American, Central American, South American, etc.? Another article has to do with the pendulum of immigration. Every time the United States needs cheap or free labor, they go get us, and then when they think that we are quote unquote taking people's jobs, Americans quote unquote people's jobs, they send us back, and we keep seeing that time and time again. And now there's even a talk about there being a new bracero program where they want to bring more people in because there's nobody around to pick the crops or to clean the hotels or to serve in the restaurants, right? So these are the kinds of things that we have here. Um, there's an article in there called Cesar Chavez, The Lessons of One Man for a Generation of Latinos in a New Millennium. There we go back and examine some of Cesar Chavez's quotes of what he spoke throughout his life. And again, that gives us a sense of pride, a sense of empowerment. So, how can this book be used? Well, in a multitude of contexts, really. In social classes, social sciences classes, Hispanic literature classes, Chicano, Latino, etc. classes, in history classes as well. And that's what makes it such a valuable tool because we can use this as a starting off point to
Mm.
discuss all of these things. Because these are important topics that continue to come forth, regardless of whether the current administration in this country, politicians, whatever, regardless of whether they're trying to erase us and our history or not, this book is important because it serves as a tool to educate, to empower, to engage with our next generations, our students, about what has happening, what is happening, and what may happen in the years to come.
Um, I will also tell you that I myself am using this book for my undergraduate classes, and the students have all been very, very receptive to all of the topics there. They have enjoyed it, and I recently had a group of students participate in the annual University of Louisiana System Academic Summit.
Oh, wow.
It
Okay.
was it was a very good experience, nice experience for the students. Um, And the topics that they chose to talk about in that conference came from your book. It was so well received, those ideas, uh, that the ideas that come from the book gave the, I don't know if it sounds too it's kind of silly of me to say it, to put it this way, no, but it brought them, as we were reading the text, a smile in their face because they're learning about themselves. And then they formed groups, they came up with ideas, topics to present, and it was very, very a nice experience for them. So they are very pleased that they're learning about themselves.
What?
And so that was very it was a nice experience even for myself. No, um, is there one section that I'm going to put you on the spot right now? No, you've already read some of the chapter titles. Is there one section, a short paragraph that you would like to read from for us from your text?
From this one, let me see. Da, 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 da. ¿Dónde está?
And I know that how challenging. I'm just wondering, maybe talking to the author right now, is, uh, but how challenging is it to uh, as a writer, to incorporate this idea that we all go through of code switching? Because you're in your mentality, you have maybe for a fictional writing, it's more understandable. But how about with in an academic setting, when you're writing an essay or presenting a formal interview? How does that play about? Do you think twice in introducing that idea? When you say, well, is this going to be accepted in a publisher, or will my students accept this idea that I'm doing this, or my colleagues, that the fact that I'm doing, voy del inglés al español y del español al inglés? ¿Cómo funciona esto?
Well, I think it all begins with sincerity of purpose. You are trying to do, or I'm trying to do, the right thing for all the right reasons, trying to address issues, and I think that's the voice that comes out. Where that's the source. I've got another collection of another book called, and it's a collection of poetry. It's called Musas Rebeldes, in English, rebellious muses. In other words, you hear this voice inside that dictates a lot of what you write, and you really can't control them sometimes. An issue presents itself in your mind, and suddenly you're like, okay, I've got to cover this. I've got to write about it right now, porque si no se me va. Otherwise, I'll lose it, right? Being bilingual is interesting. I've been bilingual as far back as I can remember. Um, I was born in Allende, Coahuila, Mexico, raised in Eagle Pass, Texas, right? Y pues desde niño, siempre con el español, siempre con el inglés, siempre pensando en ambas lenguas, siempre pensando, desarrollando las ideas, always thinking, developing ideas, beginning in one language y acabando en la otra. And it's that fast for me. Many times in class, because I teach Spanish here, I'll be translating for students who may not understand a certain passage. Lo empiezo en español and finish it in English so that they begin to make the connection con los cognados, con las palabras que tienen eh, diferentes definiciones distintas, pero que tal vez se puedan aplicar en varios contextos, etc. All of that sort of stuff comes into play. So when I'm teaching, I'm always pulling from both toolboxes.
Mhm.
I've got the Spanish toolbox, I've got the English toolbox. And to answer your question, I've got this article in here, page 5. It's one of the first essays that I wrote in my search for my of identity. It's called On Our Hispanic Heritage. It's on page 5 of the book. And basically, there I cover what I talked about already in the introduction, of where I was born, my parents' educational attainment, my struggle many times to figure out who and what I am. Because at one point, I, like many other folks have this cultural schizophrenia, cultural hybridity, um, get confused. No saben ni quién son. Mi nombre es Roberto o Robert, María, Mary. Who am I? What am I? Right? Y en esta hora aquí, en esta lectura, entonces hablo de eso, donde digo que conozco al Chapulín Colorado tal como conozco a, no sé, Bruce Willis en Die Hard, o conozco a las obras de Walt Disney, etcétera. Conozco a los chilaquiles también como conozco al Captain Crunch cereal en la mañana, etcétera. Ese tipo de hibridismo que tenemos dentro del alma. Porque empezamos como mestizos en México, parte indígena, parte español. We started as mestizos in Mexico, part indigenous, part European, Spanish. And then we transplant ourselves, or we get transplanted into the United States, and we get another added dimension, right? Conocemos a Cornelio Reina tal como conocemos a Elvis Presley, etcétera, siempre. Pero como dice no sé si han visto la película de Selena, y ahí sale el personaje hace el papel Edward James Olmos, el papel del padre de Selena. Y ahí le dice, ser un mexicoamericano es muy cansado, porque tienes que hacer doble de lo que hacen los demás. You have to do, being a Mexican American is tiring, he says, because you have to do double of what everyone else does. You have to be more Mexican than the Mexican. You have to be more American than the American. You have to know Elvis Presley, but you also have to know Cornelio Reina, as I mentioned. You have to know American music or American cultural ideals, as you know, Mexican cultural ideals. So you're always going back and forth. If you ever have a chance to read that, or to see that movie, that's one of the main points there. But to answer the question here in this one article, like it's called "On Our Hispanic Heritage," I talk about that. The challenges as being a Hispanic, Chicano, Latino first generation in high school and college have been educational. And you always run into racism and prejudice where you least expect it sometimes. You go, man, or someone says something, you're like, wait. In the past, some people have told me, Rolando, with all your degrees, you've done very well for a Hispanic. Te quedas como, wait, what? What did you just say? That kind of thing. Or this cultural hybridity. When I first left Eagle Pass, I wanted to leave behind Rolando Josue Diaz Rodriguez. When I went off to UT Austin, I became Roland Joshua Diaz because I wanted to explore the American, estadounidense side. Bueno, as I went through my cultural search for identity, I realized, wait a minute, I am Rolando Josue Diaz Rodriguez. That's who I am. You know, I'm not going to go and translate my name. So I take pride today. Now, when I was at Oklahoma State University, I had a student, his name was Fernando, and he came into my office and he had shaved his mustache and goatee half off. He was wearing two different shoes. And I'm like, and he parted his hair down the middle. Y le dije, pues Fernando, what happened? Did you forget to finish getting dressed this morning? And he said, no. He said, Mr. Diaz, today I feel like two different people. This is my Chicano side. This is my American side. Wow. What I had experienced so many years before, he was just going through at that point.
Sí.
Y eso es lo que hace nuestra alma sea tan compleja. This makes our soul so complex because we are both many times at odds with each other. Como hispanos, como mexicanos, somos parte indígena y parte español. Y luego tomamos a esta alma, we take this soul and we put it into the United States and add another dimension. Como que tenemos otra división. In English, I've heard that called cultural schizophrenia, cultural hybridity, cultural confusion. And then you get into the linguistic side where they say, you're code switching. Well, we may be, tal vez lo estemos haciendo, pero tal como le pasó al catalán en Barcelona, en España, hace la 1100 por ahí en ese tiempo. Pienso que eso le va a suceder al Spanglish también aquí en este país. Dale más tiempo, algunos 100, 200 años, and we're going to see Spanglish then after 200 or 300 years, much like Catalan happened in Barcelona, Spain. We're going to see Spanglish become more and more of a recognized language because it needs time to develop. and we're going to see it morph into that. You know, so the article, I think that really speaks a lot to me because it was one of the early articles, was this one on our Hispanic heritage, and it really captures the start of my journey coming forward in my search for identity.
Mm. So, can you give us, para terminar un poco con nuestra charla y no hacerla tan larga, so some of those other titles that you have from your other works, very creative titles, like for example, Tortilla Curtain. No? So can you give us some of those titles from your other books, other works, and can you let us know what those are about?
Yeah, this next one is Tales from the Tortilla Curtain. That came about in the first time it was printed was 2007. And then here recently, given the state of affairs in the world, I said I need to go back and add more to it.
Mm.
This book first came about in 1989 with the fall of the Iron Curtain in Germany. And I said, wouldn't it be strange if some time in the future someone were to propose the idea of building a great wall of the Americas between the US and Mexico? It was all theory. Technically, it's still science fiction, speculative fiction. But as good science fiction does, it always has social commentary, right? So when I started writing these and developing them more and more, reality started coming closer to the fiction that I was writing. And then the politicians in the early part of the century said, well, let's build the border wall. They haven't called it tortilla curtain yet, but who knows? Maybe at some point in the future they will, right? But that is what makes this book so interesting. It's speculative fiction, but it also has elements of empowerment. Um, it also has a list of words in Spanish, or at the back of the book, um, words in Spanish that should be included in English because English tends to absorb words from other languages, and also words in Spanish that should be included in the Spanish language. Um, but it also has to do a lot with. Let me see if I can find it here with empowerment. Um, don't, there's this one poem. I need to find it. Let's see. Awaken the Word is what it's called. Para verlo aquí. Let's see. I'm looking at the maybe I'm looking at the wrong page. Oh yes, 378. It's toward the back. I was looking at the wrong. But yeah. And this is again empowerment for students as we go through this search for identity. It's called Awaken the Word. It says, today I'm going to awaken a word that has been in slumber far too long. I'm going to take it from its oniric state and imbue it with new signification. In its awakened state, it's going to describe things much as it did before, but within new contexts. I will use it to describe a history, a culture, and an identity. It will be bold in its veracity, daring in its content, and hopeful in its promise. It shall apply to you and to me within the context of us. The word, Chicano. It speaks to us now more than it did then. If we stop and listen, it describes us now just as it did then. It was given birth through moratoriums, walkouts, and huelgas. It hails from the Mexica, for Aztecs we were. From this came Mexicano. As we developed our name, we fought against the conquest and chose to identify with all things that existed prior to 1492. Mexicano became Chicano. The soft sh became the fricative ch and was used as a double-edged sword, a spear, a knife, but most importantly, as a rallying cry to unite us and to identify our struggle and our plight for social justice. And yet the passing of the years has seen the sword grow dull, and the descendants of the Mexica seem to have grown indifferent. It is both our task and our calling to awaken the meaning of the word Chicano and to apply it to current contexts, to give it new life and new meanings within the fight for social justice we continue to face in this new millennium. Let us transform, evolve, and include, even as it remains true to itself. Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx. Awaken the word, confront the injustice, empower yourself. And that applies to both of these books,
Ajá.
Hispanic Legacies and Tales from the Tortilla Curtain. Um,
Pues sí.
but yeah, there's other books. The Messiah, Avia 31, Encounter with Memory are other books that I've translated either from English to Spanish, Spanish to English. Right now, we've got other books. The Spanish translation of All Bones Are White by Carlos Perez Allen. I translated that into Spanish, and he's looking for a publisher right now. I'm also have worked with Josefina Lopez. She's the author of Real Women Have Curves.
Mhm.
That is the play. It was made into a movie, and even as we speak, it's opening on Broadway at the James Earl Jones Theater as a musical. And I helped her write her biography, her memoirs. It's
Mhm.
called Real Women Have Courage, and hopefully that'll come to print here pretty soon. So the essence then of all of these publications has to do with Hispanic Chicano Latino empowerment, Hispanic Chicano Latino education, awareness, etc. That's what makes these books so important, and what makes what I do so important, because to me it's a calling. I have to do it.
Sí.
Es algo que tengo que hacer porque surge del alma, it comes from the soul, del corazón.
Y sí, y solo los que estamos, los que vivimos aquí, podemos entender mucho más, ¿no? El porqué de la necesidad de estos libros, ¿no? But I guess even if we're outside this country, we can imagine the importance of a text like this. It really does help um, anyone understand our roots, our culture, our current society, and our past and our current society,
See,
and shape our future.
and there's so many books out there. After I started research, I realized that my voice wasn't the only one as a Hispanic Chicano Latino. We've got Sandra Cisneros, Woman Hollering Creek, House on Mango Street. We've got Rolando Hinojosa Smith, all of his Clail Cities series. We've got Carlos Fuentes, The Buried Mirror, El Espejo Enterrado. That you can find it in an edition that's got a bunch of pictures. You can find just the paperback. You can find it in English. You can find it in Spanish. Josefina Lopez, as I mentioned, has written a lot of plays and several novels as well. Reina Grande has a whole bunch of books as well on the experience. So um, there's a lot of voices out there. If you want to um, know other authors, by all means, look for them, and you'll find them.
No parar de leer, no.
Exactamente.
Not stop reading. Don't stop reading. Looking for titles. There are lots of them out there. No, if you do a quick search on Amazon or Google, you can find Rolando Diaz there. You can search for his other books. But this is the one that we're promoting right now. Promoting in a sense, no, but we're talking about um, a very important book, I think, for all of us to understand what Hispanic culture is, Hispanic society, and how it shapes our everyday life. Rolando, muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos. Thank you so much for joining us. If those of you listening to us, if you have any questions, you can type those questions in the comment section, and I'm sure that Rolando can go through those questions and answer them. All right.
Very much so. I'd be happy to reach out to everyone. Just,
Claro.
I want to leave you with 10 two-letter words to live by.
Sí. A ver.
In English,
Ajá.
10 two-letter words to live by. If it is to be, it is up to me. So that is something that you need to internalize. Make your reality happen. Todo depende de ti, de tu esfuerzo. It all depends on you. And and how you move forward. And remember that you're not in this alone. There's a lot of us out here to help you in your search.
Exacto, sí. Muy bien. Bueno, pues con esas palabras nos vamos, nos despedimos y muchas gracias por acompañarnos, por escucharnos. Rolando, muchas gracias y un abrazo a todos.
Bueno, hasta luego.
Hasta luego.